Hi, hello, and welcome. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be watching part 2 of Is German as Bad as People Say? I've had so much fun with the very first part of this video. It's actually hilarious to see my own language being torn up and shown to me from a very different angle, because when you grow up in a country and you learn your own language, you don't learn it like that. You don't learn about the grammar. You don't learn about how to construct a sentence. You learn it because your parents speak it and you just copy them. It's so interesting to see all of this laid out in front of me and to see how complicated the German language really is. And my gosh, it is so freaking complicated. But also funny. We have watched the first part last week, and I have rewound back a few seconds from where I made the cut so that we can get back into it. Where we left off talking about verbs. So we do have 3 verbs in English. Just a quick recap so you can get back into it. So the 3 verbs are be, have, and will. And in German, you have sein, haben, and werden. And he'll explain it real quick, and then we'll go to the new stuff as well. But because of the fact that all of this is mushed together into one thing, we really have to get back into the topic before we can continue. But don't worry, it's not too long. It's about like half a minute or something like that. And then we arrive at the new stuff already. By the way, hop on over to Rob's World and leave some likes and subscribe to his channel because he makes really fun videos. And now, let's continue with this one.
The verbs that we tend to co-opt to build these complex tenses in English are be, have, and will. And in German you have the same with their equivalents, sein, haben, and werden, and their various forms as well. And they just sort of end up piling up at the end of the sentence. This is another of Mark Twain's gripes. He talks about how after the verb, merely by way of ornament, as far as I can work out, the writer shovels in haben, sind, gewesen, gehabt, haben, geworden sein, or words to that effect, and the monument is finished.
That's not a German
Now these
sentence.
verbs, and I suspect
but I
Mr.
get
Twain
what he
well
means.
knows it, are not ornamental. However, when you eventually get to some of them, it can sort of feel like you have already made your point and that continuing with them isn't necessary. The person you're talking to already gets what you mean. But don't worry, Mr. Twain has a plan to fix this one too. Stick around to find out. First, let's look at another arguably infuriating characteristic of German. It's separable verbs. German has another strange behaviour that's hard for English speakers to get their heads around. That is, putting part of a word at the start of a sentence and the rest of it way down at the other end. We can often break German verbs up because they have a bit at the start that is essentially a preposition, a little add-on to the verb that means something the equivalent of off or in or out or whatever. For example, to stand up is aufstehen, which is literally up stand. But sometimes German speakers will rip those two elements asunder and cruelly place them as far apart as possible. As Twain puts it, the wider the two parts of one of them are spread apart, the better the author of the crime is pleased with his performance. He gives an example using the German verb abreisen, which means to depart, but is effectively to away travel. Here you can see how it can be broken up in this bafflingly long German sentence that Twain says he found in a genuine novel, and which he helpfully renders into English for us.
Moment. Just a second. Als die Koffer gepackt waren, reiste er, nachdem er seine Mutter und Schwestern geküsst und noch einmal sein angebetetes Gretchen an seine Brust gedrückt hatte, die in schlichten weißen Musselin gehüllt, mit einer einzelnen Tuberose in den Felle ihres üppigen braunen Haars kraftlos die Treppe herabgewankt war, noch immer bleich vom Schrecken und der Aufregung des vergangenen Abends, doch voller Sehnsucht, ihren armen, pochenden Kopf noch ein letztes Mal in die Brust dessen zu legen, den sie inniger liebte als ihr eigenes Leben ab. Okay, no one talks like this anymore. This is a relic from the 1800s or something, when we still had kings and castles and we fought against each other. I don't know, but No one talks like this anymore. This is so over exaggerated, and I know why he does that for the sake of a video, but it's not in any way realistic. That's all I want to say. And maybe when he translates it to English, you will see why, because the sentence just, you wouldn't write a sentence like that.
Long German sentence that Twain says he found in a genuine novel, and which he helpfully renders into English for us. The trunks being now ready,
Oh, he's reading it. I'm sorry.
he after kissing his mother and sisters and once more pressing to his bosom his adored Gretchen, who, dressed in simple white muslin with a single tuberose in the ample folds of her rich brown hair, had
See,
tottered feebly down the stairs, still pale from the terror and excitement of the past evening, but longing to lay her poor aching head yet once again upon the breast of him whom she loved more dearly than life itself, parted. Now, I would have zero chance of knowing which verb I started saying by the time I got to the end of that screed. It does seem bonkers to
yeah.
have, what, 70
Yeah,
odd
but you don't do that. That's my point. You don't do. I understand why he's doing that again, but you don't do that. I think it would be more effective to show the insanity of the German language if you used nowadays examples instead of stuff that no one in this country writes, or like no one does that. And also thinking about it and really trying to wrap my head around what he is saying at the moment, yes, it is possible to rip those words apart, but only if you talk in a really posh way. I guess that's the best way to describe it. Normal people, normal, general, everyday people do not rip those words apart because they don't need to. This is a thing almost from the past. Unless he has an example that I'm not thinking of right now, that is a nowadays example. I am saying this is something that does exist, but it's a relic from the past, fortunately, because that's freaking complicated.
other words between the beginning of a word and the end of it. Twain says, "Can anyone conceive of anything more confusing than that?"
Yeah, see, Twain said that. And when did Twain live? Mark Twain lived from 1835 to 1910. That's what I'm talking about. It's a relic from the past. Yes, it is in the German language, but it has changed so much over those 100 years. People are not speaking or writing like this anymore. Like I said, fortunately, for people like me who don't want our language to be that complicated.
Maybe not. Let's look at Twain's next reason for damning Deutsch. It's pronouns. Now, if you think we have a pronoun problem in English, thou ain't seen nothing yet. We at least have a neat set of pronouns for me, distinct pronouns for you, for him, for her, for them, for us, and you can't really get them confused. However, German takes a characteristically more complicated approach.
Yeah.
Take the German for she, sie. Well, that is also the German for you, if you're being formal. And the German for they, it can also mean her, and them, and you if you're talking to multiple people as well. And, as Mark Twain
This one is 100% true, even nowadays. 100%. This is so freaking complicated. And if you learn German nowadays, you will have to learn that. You will have to. It is still like that. Nothing has changed. You won't have to deal with the last topic that he mentioned, but you will have to deal with this. Just looking at it. And also, I don't know if he will still mention this, but it's also very important for you to, as you can see over here, some of those Z's start with a small s, and some of those Z's start with a capital S. And this is not just because he wanted to do this. This is something that you have to know and you have to do. Because if you write an email, for example, and you put a Z without a capital S, it will mean something different than the same word with a capital letter in the beginning. I know, and I'm sorry, I didn't invent that. Just saying.
and them, and you if you're talking to multiple people as well. And as Mark Twain points out, it can also mean it, because if you want to use it in German, it has to match up with the gender of the thing that you're referring to. If we return to Good Lady Turnip from earlier in the video, in German you wouldn't say I tasted the turnip, it was nice. You'd say I tasted the turnip, she was nice.
See, and that's what I'm struggling with when I'm talking like in English, because I am using those genders still. If there is something that's referred to as it in the English language, I'm referring to it as she or he, because I'm not used to using it as a word. Because in your German you have all those categories that you put it into. It's so freaking complicated, and that's why I always talk about the robot. He did something that. Oh, that's so funny. Also, something else that he's probably going to talk about, or maybe, I don't know, but the you in German can have different meanings as well. So many different meanings. And we do have this formal you, and we do have the general you that you use with friends and people you know, and you have to know which one you use. Because if you talk to your boss, you can't use the same you as when you talk to your friends, like you do in English. But in German, when you talk to your friends, it's du, you, du. If you talk to your boss, it's sie, you, sie. So with the capital S. Also, something else that I'm just seeing, this sie, that's she, usually is written with a small s, but it's written with the capital S just because it's at the start of the sentence. Usually if you see a Z with a capital S, it has a different meaning. This is just allowed to write it with a capital S because it's at the start of a sentence. So if there was a comma instead of a full stop at the end of the sentence, ich habe die Rübe probiert, comma, sie war lecker, you would have to write the Z with the small s because of the context. You can only write it with a capital S if it's at the start of a sentence in that case. Just to make it a teensy tiny bit more complicated for you. You're welcome.
Placing it with gendered pronouns is perhaps the habit I've struggled most to pick up while learning German. She can be a tricky language. And Twain appears to have struggled a little bit with it as well, because he says, whenever a person says sie to me, I generally try to kill him if a stranger. Proportionate. On that rather extreme note, let's try to turn things a little bit more positive. We'll talk about how Twain proposes to solve what he sees as the problems with German in a moment, but first I should point out that he does see some virtues in the way that German does things. For example, he says, in German all nouns begin with a capital letter. Now that is a good idea. It's true.
Yes, and I am still struggling with English because when I learned English at school, I was taught by all of the English teachers that I had throughout the school years that in English you don't write nouns with big capital letters in the beginning. Every noun is written with the small letter in the beginning. You don't use this capital thing. This is a German thing. Forget about it if you're writing in English. But looking at YouTube comments for my own videos, people from the UK are writing nouns, partly, not all of them, with capital letters. And I'm so confused at this point in time whether this is still a thing, ever was a thing, or if my teachers just didn't know what they were talking about. I have no clue whatsoever. Because in the German language, it's easy, just as he said, it's so freaking easy. Every noun, capital letter. Easy as that.
Not just proper nouns, but all nouns in German are capitalized. I'm not totally sure why, but for a learner it is kind of handy when trying to get your head around a long sentence to know where the nouns are. Especially because sometimes a verb and a noun can be the same word with only the capitalization separating them. Twain thinks it's a good idea too, that's why...
Yeah, that's true. We do have that. For example, leben, if you write it with the small L, it's to live, it's the verb. But if you write it with a capital L, it's life. it's the noun. So you have to know which letter you're using, because otherwise, I mean, you can understand which one is meant in a bigger context, in a bigger scheme of things. If you read a sentence and you're like, okay, I think they mean this, or I think they mean that. It's not that hard. And I'd say it's forgiving if you start with the German language and you confuse the letters. But I think this is one of the most easiest things in our language to learn, that if you mean the noun, just put a capital letter. It's that easy. At least we got one easy thing. Ain't that right?
Separating them. Twain thinks it's a good idea too. That's why in this book he goes a little overboard with the capitalizing of the nouns himself. So there you go, a win for German in Mark Twain's eyes, even if he does
Yay!
follow up his compliment with, and a good idea in this language is necessarily conspicuous from its lonesomeness. Charming. But he does pick out one more virtue of German, and one that I think is going to surprise you. He thinks German words are lovely. He says there are some German words which are singularly and powerfully effective.
True.
For instance, those that describe lowly, peaceful and affectionate home life, those which deal with love in any and all forms, those which deal with outdoor nature in its softest and loveliest aspects.
This word, by the way, is used so much. If you want to tease a non-German speaker, please say this word out loud. How would you say it? And I have heard so many reactors saying, trying to say this word, and it's really, really hard to do, especially for English speakers, because of the fact that you have these two H's. There is one H here, there's one H there. You have the Ö, and then you have the R and CH, which is really hard to say for a non-German speaker. So if you want to say the word squirrel, which by the way is such a cute English word, I love that word squirrel. But if you want to say it in German, it's Eichhörnchen. 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 Let's continue.
Outdoor nature in its softest and loveliest aspects. In a word, those which deal with any and all forms of rest, repose, and peace. That's right, peace. What a difference a century makes. Twain is writing this before the World Wars and before historic events undoubtedly changed attitudes to the German language, made it perceived as angry and authoritarian. I've said on this channel before that people who say German words are ugly are just saying them wrong. Sure, if you pronounce Schmetterling like that, Schmetterling, it sounds angry, but
Thank you! Thank you so much for picking that up. That's exactly what I was talking about at the beginning of your video when you did the exact same thing, by the way. Well, thank you so much for talking about it. Oh my gosh, what a relief. Because I've never ever actually heard that from a foreign speaker, that they address this topic. That most of the English speaking people, when they speak German, they speak it like this. Schmetterling instead of Schmetterling. Like, thanks.
it's going to, isn't it? Twain actually argues that some German words are too nice. Would any man want to die in a battle which were called by so tame a term as a Schlacht? And observe the strongest of the several German equivalents for explosion, Ausbruch. Our word tooth.
Wait a minute. And observe the strongest of the several German equivalents for explosion, Ausbruch. Okay, this is also relic from the time when he was alive, because nobody calls an explosion an Ausbruch anymore. No one. An explosion is an explosion. It's the same word, just differently. And I know German equivalents, one of the strongest ones, but Ausbruch, no. We do have that term, but it describes something completely different at this point in time, because an Ausbruch means if there is a virus or some sickness that goes around, then you say, oh, this is an Ausbruch. This is an outbreak of something, of a virus or a pandemic or something. So we still do use that term, but not for describing an explosion. Explosion is Explosion.
For explosion, Ausbruch. Our word toothbrush is more powerful than that. So as far as I'm concerned, that's case closed on whether German really is inherently ugly. People just think of it like that because of, well, the Nazis. So after
Yeah.
writing that wrong, let's look at Mark Twain's solutions for the aspects of German that he finds rather less endearing. At the end of his essay, he says, "I have shown that the German language needs reforming. Very well, I am ready to reform it. And here are his 8 ways to fix German.
What?
In the first place, I would leave out the dative case." Okay, I didn't even mention this one. For English speakers, it's just too confusing. The dative
Yeah.
case is a grammatical complication that existed in Old English but doesn't now, and just be thankful for it. In the next place, I would move the verb further to the front, thus solving all German to English translators' problems. Third,
Wait. No. No. Also, the sentence is still grammatically wrong. And not just because of the Töten that he put up there. No. No. No, this just looks wrong. Don't change it. I know my language. Don't put. No. Please not. We don't need change. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, non-native German speakers, but I don't want it to change.
German to English translators' problems. Thirdly, I would import some strong words from the English tongue. Twain reckons German needs more proper swear words. Most of Germany's worst ones you could still use in front of your...
Okay, maybe that was back then. We do have stronger swear words by now. I can't say them online. But if you want to hear one of them, for example, just go to a German subreddit and write something in English, and you will know what I'm talking about. You will get one right back if you write something English in a German subreddit. Just try for yourself and you'll see which one I mean. And we do have stronger swear words than this one. However, we did indeed adapt many English words over the last, let's say, 30 to 40 years. We adapted so many. And by the way, this is a video topic that I will talk about in the future, because some of the English words we've adapted them and we didn't change their meaning when we adapted them. So they mean the same thing. We might just say them more German. Some words we just copy one to one and use them with the same meaning. Some we keep the meaning, but we change how we say it. And some English words that we are using in the German language are not even the same than what they are in English. I do have one little example for you. Everyone in German, like mostly older people nowadays, but 20 years ago it was like, yeah, almost every German thought the word handy, which is in German a mobile phone, and everyone thought the word handy was the English word for mobile phone, and everyone said handy if they said something in English or if they spoke English. They're like, yeah, this is my handy. But they didn't know that the English word handy is actually, it exists in the English language, but it says something else. It's actually a verb, like something is useful, but it's not handy cell phone. So everyone used this English word thinking this was the English word, but it was actually something that was invented for the German language. And it sounds English, but it actually isn't. Like handy cell phone, not handy practical. That's just one example. But it's so weird, and I'm going to make a whole video about this topic because I find it so funny the way we integrated English words from that language into our own, and we use them in so many different ways. Also, the younger the people get, the more English words they use in the German language. The youth word of the year, if you don't know what that is, we like every single year there is the youth word of the year that is being voted for by young people, and most of those expressions or most of those terms are English, because people nowadays, young people on the internet, they hear English way more often. And all those German influencers, they use those slang youth words, English ones, and the younger people just copy them. This is why we have way more Denglish nowadays than we had 20 years ago. And it keeps on getting more and more.
Grandma. Fourthly, I would reorganize the sexes and distribute them according to the will of the creator. It would be helpful if girls were grammatically feminine, it's true.
Yeah.
Fifthly, I would do away with those great long compounded words or
But I
require...
have to say, girls are not feminine in the German language, but women are. Because if you say Frau, it's she. If you're a little smaller, you're just a girl. You're not feminine in the German language. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. I don't understand why.
according to the will of the creator. It would be helpful if girls were grammatically feminine, it's true. Fifthly, I would do away with those great long compounded words or require the speaker to deliver them in sections with intermissions for refreshments. The occasional mid-word breather would be nice. Sixthly, I would require a
Tea break, cake pause. Also, this is the most English thing I've seen in this video. A tea break and a cake pause. Oh, that's a good one.
breather would be nice. Sixthly, I would require a speaker to stop when he is done and not hang a string of those useless haben sind gewesen gehabt haben geworden signs to the end of his oration. Agreed.
Yeah.
Seventhly, I would discard the parenthesis. He means starting something at one end of a sentence and finishing it
Yeah, we
at
don't
the other
really
with
do
various
that anymore.
detours in between. He wants to outlaw that. Infractions of this law should be punishable by death. Blimey, Mark. And eighth and lastly, I would retain Zug and Schlag and their pendants and discard the rest of the vocabulary. A bit of an anticlimax, but he's basically arguing for his two favourite words to be the only words in the language, just with suffixes and prefixes. I'm not sure he really means that one.
Yeah.
He continues, these are perhaps all I could be expected to name for nothing, but there are other suggestions which I can and will make in case my proposed application shall result in my being formally employed by the government in the work of reforming the language. He never was, but at the very least he gave us this. So what do you reckon? Is German really schrecklich? Is it really awful? Or is Twain's essay just the rantings of a frustrated student? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you in whatever you choose.
What a great video. And to answer your question, back then the German language was way more complicated than it is nowadays. So we have improved. We really have improved. And believe me, it's still complicated, but not that complicated anymore. So it seems the more time goes on, the easier German gets. But it might need a few centuries until we arrive at the point where the German language is just as easy as the English one. Or maybe it'll be faster from now on because of all the young people who only watch TikTok videos and YouTube shorts. So maybe we might move faster than we did in the last 100 years. Who knows? But thank you so much, Rob, for this video. It was a treasure, like for real. And also thank you so much for the patron who recommended this video to me. So much fun. I wouldn't say I have learned something new, but it was so much fun seeing this language, my own language, being rolled out in front of me and being dissected. And also I had so much additional input for the video that I didn't think I would have. Would you, after watching the whole video, still consider learning German? Would you? See you in the next one. Bye!